Hey, everybody. Today we have a very special guest. We are inviting somebody from the enemy over into Brownie postgame, but this is a guy that I've been watching for a very long time. I have the utmost respect for in terms of his YouTube abilities and everything he's done there. A guy's been very nice to me. I reached out to him a bunch of time for tips and stuff like that. He's helped me out. And so very, very big welcome to IngravenVids. Ingraven, how's it going, man?
Hey, everything is good, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, dude. I want to just thank you again for coming on. This is it's a big deal for me as a YouTuber to have another very well-established guy and somebody who happens to have a level of expertise in a team that obviously they're the rivalry, I would say. The Steelers are more historical, but for me personally, I mean, I was 15 years old when the Browns left and went to Baltimore, and I've always kind of I've taken it personally. I think a lot of times with the Baltimore Ravens. But let me ask you this: before the Ravens came to Baltimore, did you have a team that you supported, and why?
A little bit, because before I was back when they were the Redskins, I guess Commanders or whatever fan. But that was before I was like really into football. So I was just like whatever about them. If they won, cool. If they lost, cool. I didn't really care. But since that was the local team, that was who I supported.
Awesome. And so you're in the DC area, I assume?
Yeah, I used to be. Now I'm in Miami now. But yeah, back then I'm originally from Maryland. So that's why I supported them.
Beautiful. Well, hey, a fellow Floridian. I'm here in Central Florida. So just for everybody out there who's like, oh, if you're not in the local area, you don't count. We very much count.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Tell me about the Ravens. I know they made some changes. So Wink Martindale, Don Martindale is no longer there. How are you feeling about Mike Macdonald, and what changes should we expect on the defensive side from the Ravens this year?
I'm just hoping for more responsibility. And what I mean when I say that is with Wink, you knew what you were going to get. And that could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing as well. But with Wink, obviously, we know blitz heavy. And that's him. And that's not going to change. It wasn't going to change. That was his style. But a lot of times there could be a lack of responsibility when it came to blitzing. Sometimes, like, I remember games against the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes. I remember a lot of times before the game would start, like whether it was on ESPN or whatever, they would show this statistic, like, oh, Patrick Mahomes versus the blitz. And he had this like incredibly high, insane rating. So I'm thinking, all right, Wink, we go into this game. Wink might blitz a little bit, but he'll have a lot of guys drop back. Nope, he would continue to blitz. But then the thing about that is, this is where you have to continue to be responsible, because, hey, if you're going to blitz early on and it doesn't work, all right, I get you still trying it. But if you continue to blitz and it's still not working, let's make some adjustments, maybe scale it back a bit or whatnot. Not that you have to be timid or scared or anything like that, but you have to be responsible because you got to know what's going on. And a lot of times we just wouldn't see that. And then another thing too, there will be, like, especially last year, obviously the Ravens were injured like crazy. It was a new injury every single week. So we lost Marcus Peters before the season even started. Anthony Averett ended up starting. We lost him. Marlon Humphrey, we obviously lost him too. So we lost our top three corners. So they were beat up like crazy last year. But there was a lack of responsibility because he continued to put guys on islands who shouldn't have been on islands. And then that, again, there was a lack of adjustment. So hopefully now with Mike Macdonald, hopefully there can be just a more of a level of responsibility, just overall as a defensive coordinator, just being willing to make adjustments, being willing to recognize who's out there on the field. And I understand, like, hey, if you don't have your starters out there, you may want to give a nice boost of confidence to some guys who are backups. Like, hey, I trust in you, I believe in you. But at the same time, you have to recognize who those guys are, right? Because it led to a lot of big plays given up last year. It was ugly. So I think that was one of the big reasons why they moved on from Wink. It was apparently a mutual decision. But with Mike Macdonald, another thing that we're looking forward to him is letting the pass rushers be pass rushers. Of course, he was known for really bringing out the most of Hutchinson and then David Ajabo out over in Michigan. And David Ajabo, of course, the Ravens drafted him, but he'll be out for a little while because he had that Achilles injury at his pro day. So we're hoping that with Ravens with the pass rush has been an issue for a really long time. It's been very inconsistent, and we've had guys that can rush the passer, but I think a lot of times with Wink's defenses, they tend to have a lot of responsibility. And not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but when you have to do so many different things as a pass rusher, if you have to rush the passer, but then a lot of times you drop them back into coverage and whatnot, and then you get it's a lot of substitutions too, and you want to keep a fresh rotation, but at the same time, that doesn't allow guys to get into a rhythm like that. So that can have an impact on the pass rusher. So I'm just hoping with Mike Macdonald to see what he did with Hutchinson and Ajabo. And I know that's college and this is the pros now, but still, you got to start somewhere. But to see what he did with those guys, I hope that can translate to the NFL and the Ravens can really get the most out of their pass rushers.
Now, do you feel that there was pressure put on the Ravens organization? Were the fans upset about how the defense was going? Did they understand that a lot of the way that their defense has been going the last couple of years, or especially last year, was a lot due to the injury? I mean, we saw that from the outside. Or do you think the Ravens organization itself just said, we got to go a different direction? Like, where did that decision come from? Because like you said, it was mutual, but it was surprising. This is a guy who's been there since 2018, was a part of the Super Bowl back when he was a linebacker coach, I believe. This is a guy that's reaching a very high status within the league. And for him to go like that, it signaled a big change. I'm just curious, do you think that was a truly front office decision? Or do you think there was pressures from the outside that said, we got to do something here because something's not working. We want to start transitioning to a new style?
No, I think it was just a matter of he was going into the last year of his contract. A lot of coaches, even players, they don't like being in the last year of their contract on those sort of the lame duck deals and whatnot. But then at the same time, I think when you look at what the situation was last year, especially with injuries, when your team is faced with a lot of injuries, then that really takes it really either brings out the most of coaching, and that's whether it's good or whether it's bad. And I think with the situation being what it was, you're put on Front Street. If you have a lot of guys out, some people give you the excuse like, oh yeah, they got a lot of injuries, which is true. But at the same time, you really have to put your best foot forward when it comes to coaching. You have to. So I think with Wink, it was just one of those things where they were like, you know what, it's time to move in a different direction. And then again, like I talked about earlier with the pass rush, this is not a new issue. It wasn't an issue just last year. It's been an issue for a while now. So I think the Ravens, I feel like they took the opportunity and were like, you know what, let's go in a different direction. Wink is somebody who had been with the staff for a while, but then with them transitioning to Mike Macdonald, he's somebody that the Ravens are familiar with too, because he had been with the staff for a while, back from was it 2012 or 2013? I forget when, but he had been around for a while. And then he went to Michigan for a year, and now he's right back with the Ravens again. And of course he was under John Harbaugh's brother Jim. Yeah. So no nepotism there at all. But anyway, he's back, and we'll see how it goes. So hoping for the best. And just hoping for just some change. And again, Wink, he was not this bad defensive coordinator. Yeah. I don't want anybody to think that. But just what we saw from him, the issues that stood out from him, they really stood out, and they've stood out for a while. So hopefully those issues can be corrected.
That's interesting. I mean, from a Browns fan perspective, I think that the big thing about the Ravens, we always think about them having excellent defenses, and that's kind of the brand at in Baltimore. Other than Lamar just being insane and him just being a next level athlete who there's nothing like him. But that's on the offensive side of the ball. On defense, we look at that and we know it's going to be a tough battle every game against Baltimore, and we're not going to be able to put up a ton of points because it's typically the strength of the team. Now on the offensive side of the ball, Greg Roman is coming back. I know in years past there have been some, inklings. People weren't super thrilled about how he's run the offense and how all that stuff's gone. We got Lamar Jackson, who's still, doesn't have his long-term contract, still doesn't have an agent, doing it on his own. What's going on the offensive side of the ball? And is what can we expect this year? Is it going to be the same old stuff, or are we going to have some different wrinkles that are going to be tossed in there?
I'm hoping that there are definitely some different wrinkles. First, with Lamar Jackson's contract, it's like a wait and see type of thing. I know there has been talk that his deadline was week 1, and he wanted to either have the contract done or not have the contract done by week 1. So here we are. Today is Wednesday as of this recording, and today is the day when they really start installing the heavy game plan for the New York Jets. So if we don't hear anything by today, then hey, we'll see what happens. I mean, it really is. We'll see what happens regardless.
Yeah.
But with Lamar, he hasn't been one to sort of let the contract stuff distract him. I mean, the contract, he was eligible for a contract even last year, and they talked last year, but nothing ended up getting done.
Why is that? You got a guy who's won an MVP, who's gotten you guys consistently to the playoffs. You look at all the injuries you guys had last year with the running backs and everything, and yet they have the most dynamic quarterback in the NFL, hands down. I mean, there's nobody close. The only guy that I would say, even in the history of the NFL, that was close to it was Mike Vick. And the things that Lamar can do far exceed what Mike ever did. And so what is taking them? I mean, it's not like the Baker Mayfield situation where the organization was just like, look, this is, you had a lot of internal fighting. Is that happening at the Ravens? Like, what is going on there?
It's funny. I guess that's a perfect segue because you said it's not like the Baker Mayfield situation, and he used to be Brown's quarterback. But it's because of the Deshaun Watson situation, and he is the Browns quarterback. Deshaun Watson with the $230 million guaranteed. Whew, a lot of money. That's it right there. I think that's it right there because, with a lot of people have continued to call that contract an outlier. Oh, this is an anomaly. This is not the norm. And then you see the contracts of Kyler Murray, who got paid after Deshaun Watson, a higher average per year, but not close to $70 million less in guaranteed money. Then you see Russell Wilson, who got paid after Deshaun Watson, higher average per year, but still not the same in guaranteed money. And that's what the big rumor has been. And I would think that rumor does hold weight, that Lamar will want more closer to Deshaun Watson in guarantees. Because even though it is an outlier contract, if I'm Lamar Jackson, I'm looking at that like, oh, no. I don't want this to be the outlier. I want this to be the norm. And Ravens are not a team that goes like crazy with guarantees like that typically. So I think the biggest holdup would probably be the way that the contract is structured. And again, it's a lot of back and forth. It's negotiation. So this stuff is supposed to happen. Usually with negotiations, it's not all right, here's the offer that we're giving you. Okay, sure, I'll take it. No, you want to go back and forth, especially with the timing of everything. Because again, Lamar's been eligible since last year. And Josh Allen, he's gotten paid. Aaron Rodgers gotten paid. Derek Carr's gotten paid. And then, of course, Kyler Murray, like we talked about, and Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson. So it's about what the latest contract is, what the latest and greatest contracts are. Excuse me. So Lamar's got to be looking at that like, oh, yeah, I'm trying to get closer to Deshaun Watson. If not around the same, then probably more. And I wouldn't blame him at all because NFL stands for not for long. Get your money. Get your money while you can.
100%. And the way that Lamar plays, I mean, you think about how many times he's going to put himself in a position to get hit. And those typically he has been an outlier in this. I've said it for a long time. I'm like, I don't care who you are. At some point, quarterbacks are going to go down. And whether you're getting hit in the pocket, where a lot of quarterbacks have gotten hit, or you get it outside of the pocket, I mean, it's been both for him. And for somehow, some miracle, he's been healthy for the most part his entire career, which has surprised me and I think a lot of people. And I wonder if it is truly the guaranteed aspect of the contract, then there's got to be people in the Ravens going, how long? Like, we've been dodging bullets this entire time we've been running with Lamar. At some point, he's one hit away, and then we're a guaranteed contract. We're into that contract. If if that goes away. Because I think the reality is, like, I mean, Lamar, and I mean, everybody will admit that he's not the prototypical passer. Like, he's a weapon amongst himself because of what he can do that's so special from everybody else. But you take away that element, you know, you move him to like a standard type quarterback who's going to sit back there and do it. It's not the same thing. You're not going to get that same weapon out of him. So if they can, if he gets dinged, I'm not saying that I want him to or anything like that. I certainly don't. Although I would take more Hundley games when you're playing the Browns. Don't get me wrong, but I think Lamar is incredible. And do you think that bakes into the fear because of the way he plays, and that's one of the reasons why that guarantee hasn't come out?
It could be, but I don't think it should. Reason being because with Lamar Jackson, we know everything that he can do, and like you mentioned, he could always be one big hit away, but that's really life in the NFL for anybody. Yeah. Anybody at any single position, they're always one big hit away from their careers altering just like that. Ronnie Stanley, offensive lineman. 2 years ago, he was in a game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he was blocking. TJ Watt fell the wrong way. Boom. Ronnie Stanley's ankle, done. So that took him out for the rest of 2020. Mm-hmm. And then last year in 2021, he wasn't fully recovered from that. So he played one game last year, week 1, didn't play again. And we're hoping that maybe he plays week 1 this year, but probably more like week 2, week 3. So we'll see what happens with that. Mm-hmm. But that's a completely different position where you're idle. You standing there blocking somebody and things can change in a heartbeat. Yeah. But with Lamar Jackson, I know if you look at the actual like stat sheet and you look at the number of times that he makes contact with people make contact with him, defenders make contact with him and hit him. Yeah. Then you can look at a stat sheet and be like, oh my goodness, this is really dangerous. This is crazy. But then if you actually watch the game, you see, wow, this dude, he doesn't really take many hits like that.
He doesn't. You're right. He absolutely doesn't. I don't understand how he does it, but you're right. He's elusive.
Right. And then with the times that he's been injured, the first time when he's injured and taken out the game and done was in the playoff game in 2020 against the Buffalo Bills. He snapped the ball. Well, the center snapped the ball, but the center snapped the ball way over Lamar Jackson's head. So he had to run and go get it, pick it up in the end zone. And then a Bills defender tackled him. He hit his head on the turf. Game over, concussion. All right, you're done. And then, of course, last year, it was a play from the pocket where Jock got pressure. Too bad offensive line. I wish they could block a little better, but it's over with. But Jock got pressure, grabbed his ankles, took him down, and then that was the end of his season right there. So they came off of passing plays. Like I know a lot of people think, oh yeah, he's running, his style of play is dangerous, but his injuries, they came from the pocket. So with Lamar Jackson, he is who he is, and he's actually shown that he's shown that he can throw passes from the pocket as well. He can do all that stuff. Yeah. But the thing with the Ravens though, the Ravens haven't had a pocket in years. They haven't had a consistent pocket in years. So Lamar Jackson, he has to scramble out. He has to move. He has to evade pressure because there's always pressure in the Ravens backfield. And sort of just to switch gears a little bit or go back to a question that you asked before when it comes to Greg Roman. And that has been a big question for years, Greg Roman. And now he's going into he first became offensive coordinator in 2019. So it's 2022. So yeah. So he's been there a couple of years as offensive coordinator for a couple of years. And now I think the biggest question for a lot of us is what's next. After 2019, that had been my question. I talked about it a lot after the 2019 season. I was like, all right, what's next? How is this offense going to take another step forward? I know a lot of people, they looked at 2020 because that was a COVID year, and they were like, oh, well, he has an excuse because it was COVID year, so he couldn't really install all his game plans like that. I was like, oh, okay. Then 2021 came, and then they're like, oh, yeah, well, his injury, so he couldn't really install his game plan. So it was like, yeah, okay. But now this year is 2022. And there shouldn't be any excuses. Shouldn't be any excuses. And I think the thing with Greg Roman is it's not even just a Greg Roman issue, because I know a lot of questions with the Baltimore Ravens are in the passing game. But for me, more so from my point of view is we know the Ravens can pass. We know Lamar can pass. But now it's going to be how much emphasis is really put on the passing game, because Like you talked about earlier, the Ravens brand, their style of football, playing good defense, and being great in the run game. That's been their style of football way before Lamar Jackson was even a thing. That's been their style of football with Joe Flacco. That's been their style of football with all their quarterbacks even before that.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I would hope that there would be sort of a philosophy change, because Greg Roman, whoever the offensive coordinator is, until there's an actual philosophy change, then it could end up being a lot of the same old stuff. So I'm hoping that the Ravens will really implement and emphasize the passing game a lot more. A lot of times, well, really, pretty much everybody, every receiver that the Ravens have drafted, when they get drafted by the Ravens, and then when it's time for them to leave, whether their contract's up, 9 times out of 10, we look back and say, "Oh man, we didn't really fit. We didn't really get the most out of that guy. We didn't really maximize whatever he had. We don't really know what type of receiver he is." Yeah. Because there's been a lack of emphasis on their receivers. The only guys that we truly knew that about were Torrey Smith and Hollywood Brown recently. I felt like the Ravens really got a lot out of those guys, and there was still more. I feel like they could have gotten out of Hollywood Brown, but I would love for the Ravens to sort of change that philosophy to where, all right, because right now the Ravens receivers, there's a lot of unknown. There's a lot of unknown and a lot of unproven. Because you got Rashad Bateman going into his second year. James Prochet and Devin Duvernay going into their third year. Tylan Wallace going into his second year. And then there's Demarcus Robinson, who the Ravens just signed like a week and a half ago. And he's the most proven receiver, and they literally just got him about a week and a half ago. So there's a lot of unknown when it comes to the receivers in the passing game. So I'm hoping that the Ravens will really put a lot of emphasis on it, because obviously, like for people looking from the outside in, and even people looking from the inside out, you look at the Ravens in their offense, you're like, all right, obviously Lamar, but who would be his go-tos in this offense? Mark Andrews, boom, okay.
100%.
And yeah, and then last year it would be, okay, Mark Andrews in Hollywood. For the last couple of years, it'd be Mark Andrews in Hollywood. But now I'm sure people will focus on Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman. Then after that, they could be like, oh, well, I don't know who else. Because again, a lot of these guys aren't proven. So hopefully it can be a Demarcus Robinson. Hopefully it can be a Tylan Wallace, Duvernay, Prochet. But it's so important that the Ravens make other guys weapons too. Because if you still only focus on Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman and that's it, and you don't really maximize all the guys that you have, then it's going to be a lot of the same results. So hopefully they will really get the most out of these receivers and get the most out of the passing game. And again, with Greg Roman, he's known for having a strong running game and the passing game being so-so. But the Ravens last year, they did bring in Keith Williams and T. Martin. And they are well-known wide receiver coaches around the NFL. They've worked with guys like Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, so some of the best of the best, and some other guys as well. But they did help the Ravens pass game. You did see a shift in the Ravens pass game last year, but I'm hoping that with the shift that we saw last year, it wasn't only because of injuries. Because like you mentioned earlier, the Ravens did have injuries to all of their running backs. J.K. Dobbins,
everyone.
Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, yeah. So we ended up signing Latavius Murray, Devontae Freeman, and Le'Veon Bell for a little bit. And it was rough. It was rough. But one of my thoughts was that because the passing game did take big strides last year, which I appreciated a lot. But I would always wonder, like, whoa, did the passing game only take those strides because they didn't have their running backs like they expected to have? So hopefully this year can be a nice combination of what their running game, what we know their running game can be, but also of the passing game from last year too. A nice little combination of both.
Yeah, I mean, I think as Browns fans, I don't speak for all of them, but I can tell you that me as a Browns fan, when I saw all the injuries that happened to the Ravens, it's not that I counted them out because I think you have great coaches. They've got, anytime you have Lamar Jackson out there, you're going to be good. Then he got injured, and then it was like, all right, I think you can kind of count them out at this point. But knowing that it was almost like we got a free pass last year from the Ravens. It was like the Ravens aren't going to be the ones competing, and then all of a sudden the freaking Bengals come out of nowhere and start competing. Yeah. And then you got the Steelers that are kind of circling the bowl right now. I don't think they know what they're doing just yet. I think a lot of that it comes down to the quarterback situation they got going on over there. But from you as a Ravens fan, to see what the Browns did, bringing in Deshaun and the changes that we made this year, just from your perspective, what were the thoughts going on, in the Ravens world? Like, what were you guys thinking, and how do you feel about the whole AFC North right now?
Oh man, AFC North is always crazy. There's usually not a clear cut runaway winner with it. It's usually always close and down to the wire. And with the Browns, with them this offseason, I was just like, hey, that's the Browns. Browns every year, without fail, they make some big headline moves. They make some big blockbuster moves. And they do a really good job of building a very high quality roster. A lot of times when you look at their roster, especially over the past like 3 years alone, it almost looks like a Madden Ultimate Team roster or something like that. So with them obviously getting Deshaun Watson, and they'll have him for I think 6 games. So we'll see how Jacoby Brissett and Dobbs do. But then with Amari Cooper, Amari Cooper was somebody that I was considering. I was like, oh man, I wonder if the Ravens would do it. Could they? But then the Browns went and swooped in and got him. They do a good job. And then they got one of my favorites. One of my favorites on defense is somebody who I had been wanting the Ravens to sign for so long, and they almost did, like back in 2019, but it didn't work out. Was Jadeveon Clowney. I love Jadeveon Clowney, man. I
he
know
would have fit in so well there too.
Yeah, man. I know a lot of people are like about Jadeveon Clowney, but I always loved Jadeveon Clowney. So it should be fun seeing him and Myles Garrett both working with each other again. But yeah, with Browns, they continue to build just real powerful rosters, and with the quality of their roster, and then obviously with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And I know there were like little rumors about Kareem Hunt possibly being traded, but that got killed quick. But with the way that they build their roster, especially with the Deshaun Watson situation, with him getting ready to be out for those 11 games, while the quarterback is obviously a huge position on the team, they still have a chance to still be in the thick of things for as long as Deshaun Watson is out. Because if Jacoby Brissett, if he can just manage the game, and easier said than done, but Browns, the offensive line, if healthy, is a really good offensive line. They built that up like especially last year. They definitely built it up a lot last year. And then again, you got the running backs to do it with Chubb and Hunt, 2 feature backs, and y'all got them both. Then David Njoku, that's one that I'm really interested to see how he does as the guy for the Browns at tight end. They cut Austin Hooper. When they first signed Austin Hooper, I just was like, why they signing him to all this money? I just felt like Austin Hooper was always overrated.
Yeah.
But they got rid of him, and they're like, okay, that was an experiment and it failed. But I'm really curious to see how David Njoku does this year as the tight end. Because he will actually be the safety blanket. Because tight ends are a big safety blanket for quarterbacks. So for Jacoby Brissett, I would expect a lot of passes to go David Njoku's way. So we'll see, man. But the way that they built the roster, it allows them to still remain competitive even without their top quarterback. So it should be fun to watch.
Now, so Deshaun's going to be out for 11 games. He comes back week 13 because we got the bye that's baked in there. If you not looking at the schedule, right? So I'm not going to pull it up and go game by game. But out of these 11 games for the Browns, with your outside perspective, how many games do you think that the Browns? What do you think the record's going to be? How many games do you think we're going to win out of 11?
11 with that roster.
With Jacoby. Yeah, and let's just say it's a vacuum and everybody's healthy and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Man, I feel like I would actually have to see the schedule, but because you just never know. But through 11 games, I'll say 5 to 6.
Yeah, it's funny.
I'll say 5 to 6.
Everybody's saying that. I almost want to say, like, the next people I ask be like, but you can't say 5 or 6. How many games are they gonna win? But no,
I feel like it's like right in the middle.
Yeah.
Because again, with everything that's around, because again, you had, I didn't even think about the defense, especially with Greedy getting ready to come back, and then Denzel Ward, of course, too. But yeah, man, they have a good roster, a really good roster every single year. So yeah, they still gonna be able to make plays and whatnot. They still gonna have guys that can sort of compensate for Deshaun Watson being out. It's definitely gonna take a group effort for sure. But they can still make a lot of stuff happen.
I love it, man. Well, hey, we've been at it for about a half hour. I want to say again, thank you very much for coming in to Brownie Post Game, IngravenVids. You know, if you guys are out there and you want great content for the NFL, and whether it's Ravens or not, Ingraven is one of the best, in my opinion, out there today doing this. Also, all the live shows you do, everything like that. Team keep it clean. Hashtag keep it clean. You know, unfortunately, we had to bring a little purple into Brownie Post Game today. It clashes a little bit, but I want to say thank you so much for coming on in.
Oh yeah, for sure. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.